Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A brother had messaged a question, not from here but elsewhere. I thought it was a good question to raise here. Remember when we spoke about the sophists' position and then the haliyya, the in-betweenist position? This brother has added another position which the brother said it's good if this too is refuted. That if we refute this line of thinking, someone may have this line of thinking, and this may act as an impediment or an obstacle for our further progress. He said, what about this position? It's called the skeptic's position. What if someone says this, the brother said. So what if someone says, we don't know if something exists? See, here the sophists say that there's no reality. The haliyya group said in between, there's a third reality. Here the brother is saying, what if someone has this position? And he attributed the name the skeptic's position. Maybe there is such a group, or I'm sure there is, because the brother wouldn't just say something. So here, how would we tackle this? If they were to say, we don't know if something exists. So here, maybe this is the answer. That this statement of yours, we don't know if something exists. Okay, this statement. Now we're asking a question to them. Do you know it exists? The statement that you've just made. Do you know that exists? If they say yes, so you know that some things exist then. If they say no, they're saying, I don't know if this statement exists. Which means in effect, I don't know that I don't know something exists. And that's a contradiction in terms then. So what are you saying? So one can answer like that. Then the brother raised another point. It was a good point. He says, furthermore, he said, okay, what if I know myself I exist, but outside me I don't know that something exists? Here, maybe the brother hasn't digested that principle that non-existence is impossible. Non-existence is impossible. You rationally know you exist, okay. But now you're saying you don't know if outside me something exists or not. But inside you, you have rationality, and inside you, it can be substantiated rationally that outside you, non-existence is impossible. So that would be a way of answering the second point. Okay, since that was, I thought, a good question to, address here, and I want to thank the brother who asked it. Okay, lesson number 19. So, we've defined specific movement now. Look, when we get to lesson number 32, 33, maybe in 2 or 3 days' time, we're passing a very important benchmark. All these are for that. And you see, now you have some idea of the way Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh, he's doing it through first examples, comparisons, then very simple Q&As. He wants to play with our mind. But from a particular point onwards, then it goes into very deductive proofs he gives. He's playing with the mind of the beginner for now. Don't expect him giving the ultimate proof right at the start. So we said the definition was when of something moving, specific movement, is when they are exiting one state where they're lacking something to a state where they actually have something. And it's gradual. That's specific movement. Okay. In lesson 19 says, so every movement entails or has a goal. And this moving entity is moving towards the goal. Now, he says it's evident that this moving entity doesn't actually possess the goal. It doesn't actually possess that objective which it is moving towards. Otherwise, it wouldn't have moved towards it, to acquire it, if it already has it. So that would be a fallacy. They say the fallacy of, in Arabic they say tahsil hasil, meaning acquiring the already acquired. That's a contradiction in terms, because on one side you say they already have acquired it. They've reached that objective perfection. They've already acquired it. So movement has it can't be conceived of. But at the same time you're saying it's moving. So that which is moving doesn't actually, it potentially wants to acquire that objective and that goal. But when it's moving, it doesn't, in actual terms, possess that objective. Okay. So every moving entity is moving towards perfection and is, the term is important, it's exiting step by step. From state to state, we call it exiting from one state to a state which he has something. He's exiting a state which he's lacking something to a state that he now acquires something. And then he lacks something, then he acquires. It's these constant exiting steps. And every moving entity, this step by step, it starts as a weaker existential state and it's moving towards a stronger existential state. Once they acquire that objective, or as they move and they keep on adding that state which they didn't have to them, existentially they're becoming stronger. Existentially. It's all existence. But look, this is becoming now stronger and stronger. Okay, now this moving entity, when you compare it to that objective existent, existent and existence, sometimes the way I say it may be a bit ambiguous, you can't hear it properly sometimes. So that's why sometimes for existent with T-E-N-T at the end, I may say existent, just to demarcate it from existence. So this moving entity, when you compare it to that objective existent, this moving entity is defective when you compare it to that. And once it attains to its goal, it becomes existentially complete, it's more perfect, it's stronger, and if it's the objective, it stops moving. Moving doesn't have meaning here anymore, because now it's reached its objective goal. Now, that which moves the moving entity, or that which exits the moving entity from a state of potentiality to actuality. Okay, there's something which is moving it from potentiality, not having a given perfection, to actuality, now acquiring that perfection. It was lacking, now it has it. So it's exiting a lacking state to a state where it has something. Who is the exiter? Exiter meaning who exits the moving entity from that state of lacking something and moves it to a state of having something. There has to be an exiter. This word is important. We're going to need this word for maybe 30 or 40 sessions. Who is the exiter here? that leads a moving entity from defection, from imperfection to perfection. Okay, who it is we don't know. What it is we don't know yet. But we know it has to have one. And then this exiter, does it have to possess that objective perfection which this moving entity is moving towards to acquire? Yes? Is that clear? That exiter, the one who moves a moving entity from A to B, from imperfection to perfection, that exiter, must they be in possession of that perfection or not? The answer is yes. Yes, well done. Otherwise, how can something lacking perfection grant it to other existents? They must have it, like a teacher. If the teacher wants to move the student from a state of ignorance to a state of primary 1 school perfection. Okay? That teacher must have that level of that objective of primary class 1, for example, perfection, to move this child towards that. If that teacher doesn't have that knowledge, how is it going to exit that child from this step to that step? So, the possessor of any X perfection can grant it to another X lacking existent. They have to possess it. The exiter must possess it. Now here a question arises. Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh just raises the question and ends lesson 19 with this question. Someone may say that, look, sometimes I'm ignorant of something, and after thinking, I reach the answer. So this exiter of me from ignorance to perfection in relation to a particular question which I had, it's me. No one else. This exiter, does it have to be something physical to throw you somewhere? Or can it be not physical? Someone may say, look, with a particular question in mathematics or any subject, I didn't know the answer. I moved to perfection and got to know the answer. So the exiter is me. This is a question. But I was lacking to start off with. What happened? We said that the exiter must possess that in order to move someone from A to B. You're saying you didn't have it. So how come now you have it? And then you say you have it now, and you say the exiter is me? Is that possible? So who granted me the answer then? It's a question. Who had the answer in the first place and then gave it to a lacking me? And therefore, who exited me from that ignorance to that answer? From, the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. Who was the exiter? Was it me or not? If it was me, I didn't have it in the beginning. So how can something which is exiting something from A to B itself doesn't have that objective existent? Okay, and he ends there. In lesson 20, so he starts by saying, who is this? Who is actually exiting this my potential state to one of perfection? So here the example is saying, like a student is ignorant, and then he has knowledge in relation to a given thing. Who is exiting me from these states? Now, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh now wants to give food for thought now. He says, when you listen to a teacher, okay, what's happening? All you're receiving is sound waves. When I'm speaking with you, sound waves are coming out of my mouth. Are sound waves material or immaterial? It's material. Sound waves are material. When you're listening to a teacher, all that's happening is material sound waves are coming your way, and you hear them physically with your physical ear. How can physical sound waves lead to one's perfection? Or can they? Or on reading a book, one is just seeing black and white script. One is just seeing this. It's something physical. That's what's happening when you're reading. How does this seeing exit one from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge? He's hinting that it's not this which is changing you. This is not any cause here. This is something physical. It's like someone just sitting beside you, physical. So he says, who is the teacher? Are sound waves a teacher? Is black and white script a teacher? That's one question. Another question, who has learned? That entity who has learned something, what is that entity? Who is it? What is it? Who or what has exited the darkness of ignorance? What is it exactly that has exited this darkness of ignorance? Through what mechanism? Okay, well, thank you for the questions and everything. Let me give a very concise answer. It's me. Who has learned? I have learned. Who has exited? I have exited. It's okay, we accept it. It's not inaccurate. If you say me, it's me. So let's see, what is this me? This has to be opened up now. This me you say has learned. This me you say has moved, has exited state after state. Okay, so what is this me? Let us help you to start off with. Is it a physical thing? Is this me something physical? And so when it moves from state to state, it moves like this moves when I push it? Is this me a physical entity? Or is it something else? Is me, for example, my glasses, my clothes, my shoes? When I say me, am I referring to these things? Or no, it's referring to my hands or feet. When I say me, I have learned. Is it my hands, my feet, my eyes, my kidney? Where do you trace this me to? If you say yes, it's your hands, your feet, it's a part of your physical body. So when you amputate your hand, or when you take away your kidney, or donate it to someone, or you become blind, why does the I, the persist, the me, why does that continue when physical parts of your body have become amputated, but you still say me? The me is still there, it persists. And why, after amputation of any limb, does one totally disassociate oneself from that limb? As if your hand is amputated, now you have nothing to do with it. You don't even say my hand anymore. There's a total detachment and disassociation with that. But when it was with you, you say my hand. And why does one become totally oblivious with that amputated limb? But at the same time, they're not compromising one's I, one's me. The me is still there. Many parts have gone. Every 7 years, all my cells may have changed. They die, new cells come. But the me still persists. So it seems these are very, very concise arguments. He's going to give much more deductive ones as we go. He's just preparing us. It seems this me can't be traced to a particular physical part of the body. Now, when the limbs were all intact, I was very much aware of all my limbs. But when they become amputated and things happen, I suddenly totally become oblivious to them. But in either scenario, the me is there. So this me requires more effort. It's necessary to dissect this more. And here, lesson 20 ends. In lesson 21, he says, okay, we gave the hands example, and the feet example, and the kidney example. And it seemed that, yes, the me has nothing to do with these physical parts of the body. And we gave one or two examples, and it seems this is the case, because I give my kidney and it's in someone else's body now. But my me hasn't changed. But why didn't you give the heart or brain example? Let's give examples of these too. They're both physical, the heart and the brain. And is the me traced back to these? Is the me in the brain? Is the me in the heart? After all, if you take your heart away or your brain away, you die. Now, in lesson 21 he starts and says, is the ruling an answer to the heart and brain? And if the me is in such limbs, is it the same as with other limbs? Or is it different? Is the I, that me, is it different to the heart? Is it different to the brain? After all, you say my heart, you say my brain. Look, that my again. We want to know what the my is. When you say my hand, my feet, now you say my brain. But that's different to the my. We want to know what that my is. So it seems that the me may be different to the brain. It's not the brain. That my, what is that? Then he gives a scenario here. This scenario is clear, but then in the next lesson he gives a more clear scenario, which Avicenna gave. But he says, let's think about this scenario first. If one pontificates and deliberates deeply on a matter, and then on deeply thinking, they become totally oblivious. They become heedless. They have no attentiveness to their shoes, their clothes, even their hand or feet, or their heart or their brain, when they're deeply thinking of something. Or he says, go one step more. When you dream, when you're dreaming, at the time that you're dreaming, you're totally oblivious to all your physical body. You're not attentive at all to any part. Because they're all resting. They're not moving. The brain, the heart, it's not as active. They're all in a kind of latent stage. I mean, the cells are working and everything, but it's not like when you were awake. So you become totally oblivious when you dream in relation to your physical body, including the heart and brain. And then when you wake up from the dream, or when that deep deliberation, when you come out of that state, you say, I was dreaming. I was thinking. So even in your dreams, you were attentive to me, whilst you weren't attentive to any physical part of yourself. But the I was still persistent. Look, that's something to bear in mind. It's still not 100%, but it's pushing us in a direction right now. So this I has to be other than one's limbs, other than the brain, heart, eyes, hand, feet. because all the body parts were resting. But you say, I was thinking, I was dreaming. So maybe the I is other than the body parts, other than the physical body parts we have. It's something else. It's substantially, the substance of it seems to be different. And how can the I, therefore, so it exists, the I, we do understand it because we use it and we say, I dreamt, I thought, I did this. But we can't touch it or sense it yet. And then this I, this me, how can it be with the body, but other than the physical body? It's not outside the body. It's in some way with the body. But you're saying it's other than the physical body. How is that? It's a question. And then this I, this me, how does it move? Look, all these preliminary stages of what is movement. Now it's saying this me, which you're saying is other than the body parts. How do we evaluate it movement-wise now? It's getting very sensitive now. Lesson 1, he did mention something about knowledge being the ultimate criterion for all good. And that's why humans are more noble than animals, and animals are more noble than plants, and so on and so forth. Have that knowledge in the back of your mind. Here, we've come now to a me. This me, now we've spoke about movement. Please tell me then, if it's other than the body parts, what does movement of me actually entail? How does the I move, the me move, and attain to perfection from a state of deficiency? What does it mean that I am deficient in something and then acquire it? Now this is a good scenario to start off with, but still it may be lacking in other areas. In lesson number 22, he says that, he starts by saying the previous example showed that the reality of man is it's me, the I, and it showed that this me is other than the body parts, roughly speaking. He says here in lesson 22, let me give you another demonstration. And this method was first written by Avicenna. Descartes has used this, but he was a long time after Ibn Sina. And so this, in Western philosophy, they attribute it to Descartes. But like many other inventions that the West attribute to Western scholars, centuries before that, like Galileo and Copernicus and all these, centuries before, the Muslim scholars have mentioned all these in the books. Those books still exist. But they don't do that, yes. This media problem existed from those times, yes. So, this was first written by Avicenna. And this is what Ibn Sina says. Imagine you were, it's a thought experiment, so to speak. Imagine you were brought into existence instantaneously. Okay, so you came into existence, but all of a sudden, like a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old, you came into existence. And you came into existence in a tranquil, peaceful, silent, and dark room. So there's no physical interference. And you were brought into existence in an instantaneous state whereby all your limbs were healthy. You didn't have any pain, so you become attentive to the pain. It's a dark room, so you don't become attentive to light or anything. It was tranquil, you don't become attentive to anything outside you. So you came into existence instantaneously, but the place that you came into existence, there's no interfering factor which makes you attentive to it. Even your limbs are all healthy. There's no pain, so you become attentive to the pain. There's no illness. it's not cold. That place is not cold, it's not hot. Because if it becomes cold, you become attentive to cold. If it becomes hot, you become attentive to something. Light or the rays of light doesn't exist. So nothing is preoccupying you, and nothing is attracting you to that thing. So nothing makes you attentive to, nothing preoccupies you, making you attentive to that thing. And then you've come into existence. And no movement or motion makes you attentive to yourself either. You're not moving so that you become attentive to yourself. There's no pain, so you become attentive to yourself. There's nothing outside you that you become attentive to that either. So in such an environment, imagine you came into existence instantaneously. Ibn Sina says, in such an instantaneous state, are you attentive to yourself? There's nothing that all your limbs were all sound. There was no pain that made you attentive to yourself. There was no movement that made you attentive to yourself. Imagine there was nothing which made you attentive to yourself. There was no light, there was no cold, hot, anything. Imagine there was nothing. The question is, are you in that state? And you've just come into existence instantaneously. Would you be attentive to yourself and accept your existence and say, I am? Would you say that? Whilst having no preoccupation or attraction to any of your bodily limbs, outer or inner, including your brain and heart? And the answer, he says, is yes. You would still be attentive to me. And this shows that you are other than your body parts. This me is something other than your body parts. And then this demonstration here by Ibn Sina, Ayatollah Hassan Zar says it's better than the previous demonstration. Why? Because in the previous demonstration, creation was not conceived of instantaneously. But in this, creation was instantaneous. So there was me and I was dreaming. There was me, I was thinking. So there were many things I was attentive to. It wasn't instantaneous. At the end of the day, maybe when I was thinking, my mind maybe then suddenly became attentive to a light or something, or I was attentive to my body at the same time. It was hot, it was cold. There were many properties which may have made me attentive to myself. Or when you're dreaming, it's possible that you're still attentive to pain that you may have or other things. After all, a gradual creation, a graded creation preoccupies man with respect to one's body limbs. But if one was brought about, because of those habituations one has, but if one was brought about instantaneously, the notion of attentiveness to the body and limbs can no longer be seen as an obstacle in demonstrating that man's reality is other than his physical body. Once you come instantaneously, all obstacles are now eliminated from the picture. But you still are aware of me. So this me now, although this is not 100% proof, but still, it's one step more advanced than the previous demonstration. So now we're even getting more closer to this idea that this me is other than my physical body. Okay. Then, in lesson 23, he takes a break. It goes back to these questions again. There's a lot of questions he's going to ask. In lesson 24, he's going to give a summary now. So far we've done, I think, 12 principles. We've summarized everything in 12 principles. He takes a break in lesson 24 and he gives a summary from 13 to 23. We'll cover that in a minute. But lesson 23, he's going to ask questions now. In lesson 25, where we'll start tomorrow, he's going to start answering these questions, but very slowly and surely. But around 30 to 32, things will be getting a bit more sensitive. 33, something's going to happen. Well, not drastically, but you're now on the mountain, so to speak. Yes, you're on the mountain. So, in lesson 23, with these two, if you like, semi-demonstrations with respect to what am I, and this, whatever this reality of me is, it's other than the body. But what is this me? Now, we have to give it a name. Now, right now, it doesn't matter what name we want to give it. But we can say soul, we can give it any other name. Soul is the name he uses for now, but he says the name doesn't matter. And the Farsi word is nafs, Arabic too, nafs. But we don't know what it is yet. That's why the name doesn't matter. We just know me, I am, and we know it's other than the physical body, but what it is we don't know. But let's call it nafs, or soul for now. And how is this nafs related to the body? Look at these questions. Is the nafs in the body like water is in a cup or glass? Is the nafs in the body like concepts in relation to words in a sentence? How concepts are in the word? Is the nafs in the body in this manner? Is the nafs in the body like water is in leaves or plants? That's different to water in a glass. Is the body a shadow of the nafs, of the soul, or a symbol of the soul, like the shadow of a bird when the bird is flying? Is the body in relation to its existence and its connectiveness and its harmony, the body, is it dependent on the nafs? Or is the body not dependent on this nafs, existence-wise, and is just like an instrument for this nafs? Is the body for the nafs like a horse for its rider, so that the rider can take it wherever it wants? Or is it none of the above? So how are the two related? This nafs, which the me, and the body? Or is this question of how are the two related, is the question wrong? Because there may not be two. With the shadow and the bird, it's two different realities. With the water and the container, there are two things. The word and the meaning, there are two things. And we are after the rider and the horse, there are two things. All these, there were two realities. Is the question wrong? Maybe it's not two things. Look, it's a question. And then how does this nafs work through the body? Is the nafs like a magnet that attracts iron particles towards its fields? Are the nafs and the body mutually dependent on one another? Or is the dependency one-sided? Or does each one depend on the other in different specific ways? Or does the nafs need the body in certain actions like touching, seeing and tasting, but not in other actions? It doesn't need the body, like thinking. Or does the nafs depend on the body in the beginning, but later it's not dependent on the body? Or does the nafs depend on the body existence-wise to come into being, but not persistence-wise to remain? Very important questions. And if the body is a house or abode for the nafs, did the nafs exist before the body? Or did it come into existence with the body? And if before the body, where was it before? And why did it find affinity and dependency with this particular body? And if the body is a nest for the soul, who built this nest? And does the nafs, the me, grow as the body grows and develops? And if so, how? Does this reality of me, the I, does it have length when you say it grows? Does it have length? Does that reality have breadth? Does it have width, depth? Does it have weight? What is the cause to the growth of this me? Is it food? How food contributes to physical growth and development? Does this physical food contribute to the growth and movement of the nafs? And if the soul or the nafs is other than the body, when it detaches from the body and the corpse decomposes, what happens to the nafs? What's the difference between a body and the corpse? Does the nafs cease to exist at any time? And at death, does the nafs separate from the body? Is this separation like the separation of a bird from a cage? And then, what is the fate of this nafs? Look, all we've established so far is there seems to be, we know there's a me, and this me seems to be other than the physical body. If that's the case, all these questions arise now. We shall stop here, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh. These questions are enough to polish and cleanse ourselves, to cleanse and polish the mind. To attain to answers, we need a lot of resolve and an iron will. Yesterday, a brother said to me, I can't sleep at night because of these lectures. That's a very good sign. This brother is moving. He's moving. Something's already started within him. These questions will now polish his movement. Polish over polish will cleanse him. Yes. Okay. So here he ends lesson 24, and in lesson 25 he says that, okay, let's continue from lesson 10 and 11. In lessons 10 and 11 he concluded the first 9 lessons into principles. He formulated them into principles in lessons 10 and 11. And we came with 12 principles. He says, let's add to this list now. So everything we've now learned for now, studied for now, everything he said, he's now going to summarize them. So from lesson 10 to lesson 23, everything our minds have come up with these conclusions, he's now going to summarize. Principle number 13, movement is secondary to need. There has to be need for something to move. Number 14, the objective perfection, the objective or the perfection of a moving entity is beyond and more valuable than the moving entity itself. Because when it reaches its objective, it's a stronger thing. So existence has degrees and layers. Number 15, all existing things are traced back to an existent, which must be the goal of goals, the perfection of perfections, and their movement is inconceivable. Because it has all the perfections. So this has X perfection, this has Y, this has Z, but it all comes from that which has all perfections. That question of existence and an existing thing, the relationship between pure existence and an existing thing. That existing thing has a share of pure existence. It's manifesting pure existence to a degree. Number 16, any given existent is good and perfect and complete in and of itself, in its own right. If you say it's better or perfecter, that arises after comparing it. And no given existent is bad in and of itself. And if you say bad or worse, that only arises after comparing it with something. Principle number 18. Genetics, the teacher, mentor, friends, society have a share with respect to one's salvation and wretchedness. Principle number 19. Movement is defined as a given thing's exiting a state of potentiality, it's potentially something, it's lacking something, to actuality, where it acquires that perfection it lacked. Number 20, every moving entity must have a cause by means of which it moves, i.e. an exiter, which enables the entity to exit that state of deficiency and acquire that state of perfection. Principle number 21, everything is constantly moving. And this universe, everything is moving around us. Although there I mentioned Shahid Mutahari's thing. These things which are moving is things which haven't reached that state of perfection. Like stones, plants, animals, humans. Saying a watch, it doesn't apply to watch necessarily, or a car. Number 22, books and teachers are preliminaries to knowledge. They're not the grantor of knowledge. They're just sound waves. It's just physical black and white script. And number 23, me, which seems to be the reality of man, me, is other than the body. That too I've established, albeit concisely. Now, Ayatollah Hassan Saleh, he ends with this number 23. He's gone through 24 lessons now, and now he says, it's better if we label this, the reality of man, this me, it's better if we give it a name. He says, the scholars, the experts in Ma'rifatun Nafs, there are 5 names they've given to it. We'll choose one, we'll stick with it. One is Nafs, soul. The other is I, or me. That's also a name we can give it. Another is the rational soul. Another is the psyche. And the other is the spirit. Then he says, for example, with the spirit, we don't use it for cows and sheep. You use it for, rational entities like humans. These 5, the experts of the science of Ma'rifatun Nafs, they've used these 5. And he says, let's be polite, let's not exit the standard terminology, because if we exit the standard jargon that the experts have used, maybe it may cause us problems later on. Let's be safe and stick to it. Okay, so inshallah we'll stop there, and lesson 25 from tomorrow inshallah. وصلى الله على محمد وآل الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد والجبر. Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
So, just a thought.
Yes.
In regards to our ibadah,
Pardon?
in regards to the ibadah,
Yes.
As humans, we're making this movement and we're constantly, but the Imams had already reached that state of perfection when they were born. Or
That's impossible. Otherwise they wouldn't move. they would move. The Imams would also move. Allahumma zidni ilma. Right? They increase us in knowledge. That which doesn't move has all perfections infinitely. They are also moving. Okay? But they will always move. That's why they have to be martyred or killed. If they're not martyred or killed, they will always move. Infinitely. Yes. But the moving, of course, they have to move. You can't say that otherwise.
Is there a different kind of movement than the normal?
No,
or is this the same movement? But
no, it's the same movement, but the difference is on birth, because of what they've inherited from their father, mother, their forefathers, we say they're born ma'soom. And then from birth onwards, they preserve that ismat, that ma'soomness. But what does ma'soom mean? It means it's an index of purity whereby their guidance is from Allah directly or through angels, for example. They don't need to go to school. They don't need to read a book. But still the movement is there. When the Prophet, for example, when the children, when he was a child, they were doing things which weren't very good, then Jibreel came saying that you don't do that. Look, that's a movement in itself. But he doesn't do it through a teacher or a parent or a book. It's from within. There's angelic guidance. Yes.
There is some imperfection that we're moving. There's some deficiency.
Yes, so when you compare it to, for example, that ultimate goal, yes, their state has always become more and more perfect. So here, when you compare what they have and what they're going to, yes, that would be a deficiency, and they're moving. But deficiency not like when you say with respect to us, because we're not ma'soom at birth. Yes, they are ma'soom at birth. But when you compare that ismat at birth to later, to Allahumma zidni ilma, for example, their deficiency arises. It qualifies. It's just that the nature of it, it's not like ours, for example. And we have that potential. We can also be born ma'soom from birth. It's possible. It's not impossible. Then we have the potential to preserve that ismat too. But then ma'soom also has degrees. You see, all these are, one has to have all this, otherwise if we just say they were deficient at birth, then that's going to give the wrong connotations. Yes. Yes, yes.
Sorry.
That's okay, no.
Yeah.
Any questions? Yes.
So, in the Quran, there's an ayat that says that they ask you about the soul,
Yes.
and then no one knows except Allah, except a
Yes.
little or something.
Yes. Here,
So-
the word used there is ruh. Ar-ruh. They ask you about ar-ruh. Here, unfortunately, it's a problem of, and I'm not sure why they say that's translated as the soul. See, they say very few know it's of other realm. Well, we're saying everyone knows of me. Everyone knows of the soul. So that arrow is not the soul. It can't be. And in the ahadith, it opens that up. It's a form of angel, or even higher than the angel. Tanazzalul malaikatu barruh, for example. It's that level. Not soul. Otherwise, a baby is aware of it's me. A baby is aware of that. Yes. Yes.
Masoom.
Yes.
When you say Masoom, is it divine or is it? I think I heard you just say that even you can be a Masoom.
Yes.
Is it divine or
No,
do we have to work ourselves up to become a Masoom?
Yes. It's divine, and we have to work on it. And we have that potential too. But ismat, infallibility, has degrees. That's why the Quran says some prophets are higher than others. Why? All prophets are ma'soom. But some prophets are higher than others. This shows ismat has degrees. Now what's the minimum? They say it's the station of mukhlas. This is another subject altogether. But I'll just say this, that because of what your parents do, we too can be born ma'soom. It's possible. It's possible. But since our parents usually sin or do something wrong, or they don't have halal, they have a bit of mixed with halal and haram, what they've given, what they've eaten, for example, and now they've procreated a child. That's why usually the child requires a teacher, requires to learn, has to read. They can't do it themselves. But if ismat is an index, it's an angelic index of purity. If one is born ma'soom, they don't learn from outside themselves. They learn through angels inside, from inside. That's why we say the Prophet was not schooled, not that he was illiterate. Yes.
Was he because he was the progeny of Nabi Ibrahim?
Yes. Even his own father, his own mother, and keep on going back. But yes, Ibrahim had a very big role. Our ancestors too have a role in relation to us. For example, your Khoja ancestors, for example, they converted from Hinduism to Ismailism, for example, and then from Ismailism to 12 Shia. That had a very good effect on today's Khojas. Look, it played a role in building them. But sometimes, okay, the parents and the forefathers, they live purely, they think purely, they earn purely. Oh, that's going to lead to a pure child at birth. And the potential for the child to be ma'soom at birth is possible. But usually, since our thoughts or earning or actions isn't 100% pure, it gets mixed up a bit. And that's why for children, they say, give the aqiqah, or shave their heads, give sadaqah, that amount in gold, the weight, circumcise them. All this is that baggage, the negative baggage, it wants to cleanse to some degree. But it's possible. And that's why our forefathers, our ancestors have a role in relation to us. It may be positive, God forbid it may be negative. Sometimes the forefathers, they've made a big effort, like from Hinduism to 12-Shiism. That's a very big thing. But then, because of the times and everything, what they are doing now, it's all vicious legacies for the next generation. Maybe.
So we're putting this into cause and effect, or are we saying that this is...
Yes, no, it's all cause and effect. No, it's all cause and effect. So, the forefathers doing good. Look, I'll give a simple example. This is a different subject now, but when a mother and father, if they smoke, or God forbid, they drink, the child will get a congenital illness, okay? That congenital illness, is it fair? We say no. But who are you attributing the unfairness to? Not to Allah, it's to the actions of the parents. Okay? Unlike Hinduism, we don't say they're born with a congenital illness because of punishment of the parent. This is not a punishment. It's not a punishment. Actually, it may be a reward. That depends on other parameters. But it's cause and effect. You did that, this is the result. Nothing to do with punishment. Now that's a physical example. You now think of pure thoughts, never thinking bad of someone, never wanting bad of someone, even animals. So sometimes some people don't want bad of animals, but in relation to humans, they attack. Something is wrong there. Okay? We have to start with humans first. Pure thoughts, pure actions, never sinning. pure earning, the clothing you're wearing, the food you're eating and everything, this is going to have a very big effect, but it's cause and effect. But this is spiritual genetics, if you like. That is physical events happening. This is spiritual, but it's all cause and effect. Okay. So that's 2 lectures tonight. I gave 2 lectures, but okay.